Welcome back to Southern Minnesota TV. This is my fully modded out mini bike. It was making 20 horsepower, 50 miles an hour. This thing was a ripper. And now, ever since my brother drove it one day, there's no compression. We're going to look into that in this video, see if we can't fix it. So I think we better leave the engine on the bike for now and just start tearing it apart so we can take the side cover off and the valve cover off. Just see once if we can see anything wrong. If we see something catastrophically wrong, we're not going to fix it. We're probably just going to swap the engine, swap a stock engine on this. But we have to tear this apart and find out what went wrong. There we go. We have the valve cover off, all greasy. That for sure needs to get cleaned up if this is going back on here. Now, if I pull it over, okay, so the exhaust valve is not releasing all the way. I can feel that. So that's our problem. Now, why did that change all of a sudden while driving it? So I can't see what was causing the intake, the exhaust valve to not fully close. The rocker was always tight on there. There was no valve lash. And so I've unbolted the engine and I'm going to take it over to my bench and find out why it did that. This is a grimy engine. I think it was leaking oil in some place, and we were getting a whole bunch of excessive oil to the pulse pump. And so it just completely covered with this engine with oil. But no matter which way, right there, the valve should be all the way released. And there's no wiggle room in that rocker. See, there it goes down, there it comes up, the intake starts going down. There is no play there whatsoever. So that's where our compression is escaping, through the exhaust. But why is that? I'm going to pop the head off. So now I'm pulling the side cover off. Cam came with it. This is a hot 265 cam. So I still haven't found a problem why all of a sudden that exhaust valve had no valve lash. I don't know why that happened yet, but I do know from ever since I put this billet rod in here, it had rod mount. So I'm gonna take this Predator crank out and I'm gonna try a brand new Tilton 212E crank to see if that has a little bit bigger journal where the rod connects, to see if I can get rid of that gap there. So now I'm going to take the flywheel off to get down to that. We're taking this engine all the way apart. And these broken fins, I don't know if you noticed them or not, but they're from me. trying to torque this bolt down and a pry bar holding it steady. So that does not work. That cracks your fins off. So the rod bolts were tight. It's not like they came loose. That's just not the right rod for this crank. Nothing else to say about that.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go.
Look what I just found. That's a magnet off of one of those magnetic dipsticks. I'm gonna look further into if it destroyed the internals of my engine, but I am learning why you don't run those magnetic dipsticks. That is not so good. So I can see by the bearing, it's lighter, it's striped. So there's darker stripes, lighter stripes. Like the lighter stripes are where it was knocking, or the darker stripes is where it was knocking with the crank. So this for sure had rod knock, and that's what I thought by the sound of it also. So hopefully this Tilton crank is just a little bit bigger and it'll work perfect with this rod, hopefully. And I think I have new bearings somewhere, so we won't have to run those old rod bearings. Although when I say old, this engine didn't have very many hours on it. Whoa. Shooting pistons. Shooting pistons. Nice. Alright, now I can hit this crank. Try and get this flywheel off. Okay, that was just the lifter that fell out. Okay, so with these new rod bearings and the Tilton 212E crankshaft, I put plastic gauge in there and tested the clearance, and it came out at like 25 thousandths. So I think we're good there. I'm gonna just start installing the rotating assembly. And I popped this governor gear off this crank. Better lube it up first. This is the motor oil I'm gonna run. I just have it in a little container here that I can oil up the crank. Oil up the whole thing. Can't have too much oil. I'm gonna lube up my piston ring compressor. Like I said, can't have too much oil. Lube up the piston itself, all the rings. Make sure my ring gap is far apart from each other. 120 degrees. The gaps should be away from each other. And then some oil in the bearing. So, I just found out I can't use my piston ring compressor tool. Oh wait. Alright. That'll still work with the head studs on there. Alright. That's good. This tool makes it so much easier. Well, I hate to break the news, but I'm pretty sure this crank is the exact same as what came in this engine. And so this is just a cheap Chinese 212cc engine. It's not a genuine Predator engine. Because Predators and Tiltons are supposed to have different cranks. But this, whatever this 212 was, that came off a power washer, has the same crank as the Tilton 212E. I'm pretty sure. Because I can visibly see play between the rod and the crank. Just like I could before. It's the exact same. We're still going to have rod knock. But we're going to run it. Because I don't have a different billet rod. That's really the only other option now, to get a different billet rod. But it ran for a couple months with rod knock, so why won't it run again? It's not like that was the problem with this engine. We still haven't found the problem. I'm assuming it was probably the magnet that was floating around. Got caught between the exhaust cam lobe and the lifter, and then the exhaust valve wouldn't close, and then we had no compression. I'm assuming that was the problem. Not 100% sure. That's why we're going to throw it all back together. And, well, we'll find out. Obviously, we'll have compression because I'll set the valve lash again, but we're just going to run this engine. Oiling up the lifters. And here's the hot 265 cam. Lube up both ends. And the lobes. And install this bad boy. That's where I'll line the timing marks though. That usually helps. Yep, timing marks are aligned. Now I'm just going to put some RTV on this surface and put the side cover back on. Time to lap the flywheel. Because I'm putting on a new cast iron flywheel because the old one had fins broken off and was way over torqued on there. So I just like to apply plenty of valve grinding compound. "6" timing advance key. Put it in there so that the notch is back so the flywheel twists forward. Now the flywheel's on, and now I need to find a nut and this, and then that gets torqued to like 65 foot-pounds or so. So, out of a torque converter, just a regular 30 series torque converter, I took the back plate of the clutch, drilled holes in there that align with where the torque converter plate mounts, and so that is bolted on there, keyed on there, so the crank can't move. And now we just torque this down to 65 foot-pounds. Well, now it's time to install the head. Got that all cleaned up, and right here I have the head gasket on the right way. I put that on backwards way too many times. But I think it's on the right way this time. Actually, I know it's on the right way this time. Head studs make this so much nicer. You can see this engine build in the last video that I did, or the last video about this mini bike. To my understanding, I think 17 foot-pounds is like 206 or 207 inch-pounds. So this is an inch-pound torque wrench, so I'm going to do 207. Just like that. It's all torqued down. Now I can throw in my push rods and adjust the valve lash. And then the engine will be pretty much all put together. Just a couple more little things. So the valve cover and the valves are lashed, the valve cover's installed. It's all set correctly, all looking good. Lots of RTV. Make sure this engine doesn't get covered with oil within the first day of driving it. And we're actually gonna delete the fuel pump and this whole plate and everything. Clean up the engine, clean up the plumbing, and we don't need the fuel pump because the tank is above the engine. So let's remove that. Boom. Looks so much better already. And then you won't have to have any of the extra gas lines that go from the pump to the carburetor to the pump, from the pump to the tank, and from vacuum to the pump. All of that gets deleted. Looking good. I'll install a coil now because we broke the other one trying to get this flywheel off. And when I put it all back together, that exhaust valve was still really tight. There was no lash there. So we didn't change anything that would change that. And now we know it's not the magnet that was in on the camshaft and everything. So not sure what the deal is there, why that all of a sudden changed while Isaac was driving it. But it doesn't matter because we have compression again. I adjusted the valve lash. Just so long as that problem that caused that isn't an actual problem, we should be good. And I'll just get a 30 thousandths coil gap here. And then we move on to the carburetor. So, gonna add some oil. Before I forget,
I'm changing who I am. I'm making a new plan, rearranging.
okay, so that is good and full. Takes about half a quart. And now I'm going to go ahead and add some ZDDP supplement to just help preserve my hot 265 cam. Awesome, and I'm putting a plastic original dipstick back in it because I don't want another magnet floating around in my oil. So the engine is good and tight. We have the torque converter chain installed. Got to hook up the throttle cable, fuel line, and the kill switch, and then we can drive this thing. It's all put back together, all ready. So this is the first startup. Let's see once if it will start up. It has compression, so it's different than when we tore it apart. But I know it's still going to have rod knob, and the clutch, the outer shell of the Juggernaut, just freely spins. It's that worn out. So there is going to be some bad noises coming from this when I start it up, but hopefully it starts. Jeepers. There, I have it against the wall so I can get throttle when I start it. I actually can't pull it over. Broke the rope. So, I've decided to get an electric start. This took about a week to get from Amazon. So it's just an electric kit that should bolt right on to this mini bike. So hopefully we can get this high compression motor started with just a button. So supposedly that'll bolt right on there with a different flywheel. And then obviously a different bell housing. So we'll try and get that installed and see if that can't start this mini bike. So off with the old flywheel, and we'll have to lap on the new flywheel with the ring gear for the starter. So this kit literally was just bolt right on. I put 2 bolts for the charging coil, and then there's 2 dowel pins and 2 bolts, and then that starter bolt's right on there. That's literally how easy it is. And I've already lapped the flywheel, and we're still going to use the 12-degree advance key. Hopefully this is the right flywheel, because you need to get the non-Hemi or the Hemi flywheel depending on what engine you have. So, hoping this is the right flywheel. It's kind of seeming like it, but I don't know. I've never messed with a Hemi. All I've ever messed with non-Hemis. We have our crankshaft locking torque converter part on the bolted on the other side of the engine, so that now this can get torqued down. And now 66 foot-pounds is what I usually like to torque my flywheels to. I don't know, it's just something about that starting cup doesn't quite seem right to me, but there we go. That is 66 foot-pounds. Now the only downside to this flywheel electric start setup is now I have one of those glued on magnets that could fly off with high RPM. But this engine's never turned more than 6,000 RPM. So I'm thinking it's probably good, because these flywheels are rated for 4,000. and I've never had one blow up on me. And most people that replace these flywheels are pushing their engines to 8,000 or 9,000 RPM, so should be good. Hopefully. Now just do the usual bolt-on stuff. Don't forget about the coil. I almost did that. Should be good to try it. Except for we need to wire up the battery and the start switch also. So I got it wired up and it does spin over. It's just very crudely wired up. I'll have to clean up the wiring later. I'm gonna install a brand new pull start in case of emergencies now that we have the electric start. Oh my word. And now, since this engine has so much more compression than it did before, when it ran good, before we tore it apart, before this video, before it lost compression, we're gonna check compression now. Because I'm curious to see how much compression this thing really has. So I'll quick connect my positive on my battery and I'll show you the electric start. Key on, cranking. Okay, so right at 120, which this cam does have a compression release also, and we're right at 120. Oh, that was without throttle. Oh, that was without full throttle. When you do compression tests, you gotta hold it wide open. Alright. Man, this is a high compression motor. Try that again with throttle wide open. Holy smokes. 240. 240 compression on a 212cc motor. You guys are seeing this too, right? I'm not crazy. This thing has crazy compression. And I don't even know how. It's not even a stroker kit or nothing. It's a 212. No big bore, no stroker kit. So here, a couple hours, I built this box that bolts to the fuel tank mounts on the engine block. And this is a really big battery. A whole lawnmower battery, not just a small four-wheeler battery. Because I'm not sure if I want to spend money on a little four-wheeler battery and then it can't spin it over. Because I was already having problems with a 350 cold cranking amp battery. Having trouble to turn this over. This is only a 300 cold cranking amp battery. It can do it, so I'm just gonna leave it. I did get it to fit a little bit hard. Looks really silly with the big battery. Maybe we'll find a small battery to put in it someday. But for now, the big battery is gonna work. It's in a mount. Gotta put some nuts on there, and then obviously clean up this wiring mess. And we should be able to start this thing up and drive it around. So the mini bike is all finished up, looking awesome. Well, it looked better without the big bulky battery right there. But looking as good as it's gonna look with that big battery. And yeah, it barely has the juices to start this engine. So it needs to be that big. But yeah, this is all finished up. And it's getting late. So we'll rip it around tomorrow. See you then. Let's start up this beast. Sat overnight. We'll see how easy it starts, and then we'll do a top speed drive. All right. We got 47.7 miles an hour. Almost 48 miles an hour at 6,000 RPM. And before, we'd only get 5,800 RPM. So with this new crank and 6-degree timing key, we gained RPM. So that's good. And it's faster. 48 miles an hour. So now, with all that added weight in the front, we're going to see if we can still wheelie. It can wheelie! So fellas, that's all for this video. I was experiencing the charging coil not charging the battery, but that's not a today project. And the clutch also, I've noticed, was slipping a little bit. Something's weird there with the clutch. Hopefully a new outer shell, because that just free spins. Hopefully a new one of those will fix that problem. But this mini bike is still stupid fast, which is awesome. We got it running in this video. I think we added horsepower and we added electric start.